It started as just another one of my husband's ideas. He'd always been the adventurous type, the kind of man who thrived on excitement and unpredictability. But this was different. When he first mentioned the party, I didn't think much of it. We'd been to plenty of get-togethers with his friends before. Drinks, laughter, loud music. It was all pretty routine. But there was something about the way he brought it up this time, something in his tone, that set my nerves on edge. "Babe, you're going to love it," he said, his smile almost too confident. "It's a theme party. Something a little different." I should have asked more questions, but instead, I let it go. The night of the party, I chose a sleek black dress that hugged my curves in all the right places. I didn't know why I put so much effort into my appearance. Maybe it was to impress my husband, or maybe it was because of the way he kept glancing at his phone, texting someone with a grin he didn't bother to hide. When we arrived, I realized almost immediately that this wasn't just any party. The atmosphere was different, charged, almost electric. The guests weren't just mingling. They were watching each other, their eyes flickering with curiosity, and something else I couldn't quite place. I clung to my husband's arm, my unease growing with every passing minute. "What kind of party is this?" I whispered. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Relax, babe. Just keep an open mind." I should have left then and there, but instead, I stayed. The first hour was surprisingly normal. Small talk, drinks, polite laughter. But as the night wore on, the tension in the room became impossible to ignore. Couples started to drift apart. Conversations grew hushed and the laughter took on a sharper edge. And then, my husband stood up, his glass raised in a toast. "Tonight," he said, his voice ringing out over the chatter, "is about trust. It's about connection, and it's about letting go of the rules that hold us back." The room erupted in applause, and I felt my stomach drop. Before I could pull him aside and demand an explanation, he turned to me with a smile that was equal parts reassuring and unsettling. "Babe, come with me," he said, taking my hand. He led me to a quieter corner of the room, where a small group of his friends had gathered. They were laughing, their faces flushed from the alcohol, or maybe something else. "We're doing something special tonight," one of them said, his tone conspiratorial. "Something liberating." I looked at my husband, searching his face for answers, but he didn't look worried. He looked excited. "We're exchanging partners," he said finally, his voice calm, as if he were suggesting nothing more controversial than a game of charades. The words hit me like a slap. "What?" I said, my voice shaking. "Just for tonight," he said quickly, his hands resting on my shoulders. "No strings, no expectations, it's just an experiment." I stared at him, my mind racing. Was he serious? Did he really think I'd go along with something like this? But before I could respond, one of the women in the group stepped forward. She was stunning, tall, confident, her smile almost predatory. "It's not as scary as it sounds," she said, her voice smooth and soothing. "You might even enjoy it." My husband's friends watched me closely, their expressions a mix of amusement and anticipation. I felt like I was on display, like they were waiting to see how far I'd bend before I broke. "I need a minute," I said, pulling away from my husband and retreating to the kitchen. My hands were trembling as I poured myself a glass of water. How had I ended up here? What kind of marriage was this, where my husband thought it was okay to suggest something so outrageous? But even as my anger boiled over, I couldn't ignore the flicker of curiosity that lingered at the edges of my mind. When I returned to the living room, the party had shifted. Couples were no longer just talking, they were touching, leaning into each other, their intentions clear. My husband was standing with the same woman who had spoken to me earlier, his hand resting on her lower back. He caught my eye and smiled, beckoning me over. "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with," he said softly, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "But if you want to, I'm okay with it." I wanted to scream, to tell him how absurd this all was. But instead, I found myself frozen, caught between outrage and something else. One of the men approached me then, his smile warm but confident. "Hi," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Daniel." I took his hand automatically, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He was handsome, charming, and completely at ease, like this was just another night for him. "We don't have to do anything you don't want to," he said, echoing my husband's words. "But sometimes, stepping outside of your comfort zone can be enlightening." The night blurred into a series of moments, conversations that felt like negotiations, glances that lingered too long, touches that sent shivers down my spine. I found myself watching my husband more than I interacted with anyone else. He seemed so at ease, so willing to embrace the chaos of the night. And as much as I wanted to resent him for it, a part of me envied his ability to let go.